Hey there, Jordan Chariton. Not live, from just outside of Flint, Michigan. I apologize for the bad lighting as well as the not lavish studio like you're used to, but we just landed in Flint today. We are going to be here all week. When I say we, I mean Jen, Ty, and myself. We're here all week because on Thursday it is the 5 year anniversary of the water crisis. A lot to discuss on that. So sorry, we're not going to be going. Well, we're not live thanks to CNN and their copyright violation that was filed against us in February. So we won't be able to go live on this channel till the end of May. We're still in the middle of our 90-day ban, but just a month left to go. So I got to record in the afternoon and then premiere it, which is a big pain. But we're not going to be doing daily streams because we're going to be out and about reporting and interviewing people and stuff like that. But we're going to record all these things and then try to turn it around for you as quickly as possible. So bear with us. Today we landed. Tomorrow we are, well, let's just say we believe we will be premiering our documentary Flushing Flint tomorrow, depending on the upload speed at this place we're staying at just outside of Flint. So for members, for Status Coup members as well as patrons, you've already had access to it since Sunday. So we posted it on our website, statuscoup.com, for our members, as well as on Patreon for our patrons. You guys got it first and free, as promised. So we're already starting to see comments roll through on people who watched the documentary and were horrified, were moved, were stunned, and kind of a mixture of emotions. Like, I think when you watch this documentary, again, you could become a member right now to Status Coup. That's statuscoup.com/join. You can become a member as low as $5 a month. That's statuscoup.com/join. We are now at 355. Count them, 355 Status Coup members. That's super exciting because we literally just passed 300 like I think a week and a half ago. So we've gotten a lot of new members in the last week, thanks to the documentary. Thanks, I think definitely going on Jimmy's show and others. We've been on with Jimmy to promote this documentary. We've been on with Dave from the Rational National. We've been on with Roland Martin, who does a lot of issues on African Americans. Really good black media personality. I'm recording in a little bit with Mike from the Humanist Report. So really great promotion of this. We also went on The Hill, thehill.com, which has their own web show, and I think that video is going up tomorrow. So I'm hoping that the promotion of the documentary both has increased our membership, because that's how we're going to grow. As I always say, we're not going to grow by taking money from plutocrats and oligarchs and fossil fuel companies and banks. Nah, we are independent media. We are going to grow through you. So with our 355 Status Coup members, to go with, let's see, we have 341 patrons. So I can't do the math, but 355 plus 341 is almost 700, I think. Let's do the math. 355 plus 341, 696 total. We're about to hit 700 when you mix membership to our website and Patreon. So four more of you souls watching right now can help us get to 700 and support real independent media. And I think I'm going to show you another clip from this documentary that, if you haven't seen the documentary yet, this is brand new. I think when you see this clip, A, it's going to make you want the documentary, and B, it's going to make you proud to be a Status Coup member, because we were able to break this story in Flint because of you. You guys funded us to be in Flint for 3 weeks last summer and another week in the fall. We didn't have the money to do it. In the beginning, I was in Flint out of my pocket when I was just launching Status Coup. But you guys funded us to be out there knocking on the 450 doors we knocked on, and all that. So we're going to talk more about the documentary in a little bit. We're going to talk about what's going on here in Flint this week. The corporate media, even though the Mueller report has been out for a few days, and as I reported, well, I knew it wasn't going to find collusion because this was just a ridiculous Cold War conspiracy theory from the beginning. It did find damning evidence, in my opinion, that Trump obstructed justice 7 ways to Sunday. There's Jen Dies. Say hello for the crowd. Say hello.
Hi.
There you go. She's tired. She's been up since 2 in the morning. Did show obstruction of justice, but you would think, oh my Lord, this week is the 5-year anniversary of the Flint water crisis, and they still don't have clean water, which this documentary is going to show you. They cooked the testing. Think about it this way. When George W. Bush, landed with that, what was that, an F-15 or F-17 fighter pilot or something? When he landed and he was, dressed like he was a commando and, then declared mission accomplished, what you have, what we broke, what we're exposing in this documentary, what you have is Flint's version of mission accomplished. And I mean that seriously. You might say, well, can you really compare the Flint water crisis to mission accomplished? Yes, I can. Because what they used to declare Flint's water safe 1 year ago is based on cooked testing and data, which our documentary shows clearly. And if you're watching right now, if you're watching this stream and you've watched the documentary, please leave in the super chat. This is a super chat if you're feeling super. Please leave comments on what your thoughts were on this documentary. And also, we want people to start tweeting using the hashtag FlushingFlint. If you've watched the documentary, we want you to use hashtag FlushingFlint. What'd you think of the documentary? Urge other people to watch it, that kind of thing. Whatever your thoughts were, good, bad, or otherwise. So, remember, before I get into everything else, you do have a checklist. I want you to smash this like button. Smash it like it's Mayor Pete Buttigieg, comparing Bernie Sanders supporters to Donald Trump supporters. Yes, he did that. Which shows you even more he's taking his cues from Neera Tanden, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and the establishment. Because we know, as I reported last week, Mayor Pete is one of the members of those secretive dinners. Those secretive dinners in New York and D.C. between Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Neera Tanden and Terry McAuliffe and big donors. And Mayor Pete was the last one at this corrupt secret dinner, series of corrupt secret dinners. So, seems like me, he's taking his cues, he's taking his talking points. They're saying, hey, throw this out there, Mayor Pete, because he's their guy, he's their candidate. We just talked about become a member, so statuscoup.com/join. Going to push you more on that in a little bit. Follow us at statuscoup and our podcast, bit.ly/statuscoup podcast. And join our email list, statuscoup.com. If you join our email list, you're going to know first, and you'll be up to date what we're doing in Flint this week. It's a real, I'm not going to lie to you. And remember, smash the like button. If you haven't smashed the like button, go ahead and do it. The more people that like this stream, the more people that see this stream, the more people that see this stream, the more revenue we get, the more places we could go and cover stories like Flint elsewhere that the corporate media is covering up rather than covering. And once again, I'm sorry for the lighting. It's the best I could do. We're at an Airbnb and not great lighting. So, dark face Jordan is better than no face, I guess. So, what I want to get across to you guys is this. I think that, this is now my 14th reporting trip to Flint. Majority of those were with the Young Turks, but I've been back here 4 times now since we started Status Coup. And it's very hard. I want to give you a little bit of the behind the scenes. It's very difficult to get people to pay attention. When I say people, I'm not just talking about corporate media outlets. I'm talking even about progressive influencers on Twitter and online. Because very tough to get people to remember this is an ongoing crisis. This never stopped being a crisis. And sometimes I've been criticized, like, Jordan, you cover Flint too much. I don't think you could cover this enough, frankly. Because this is about, do we live in a country, or do we, that is based on common humanity, or do we live in a survival of the fittest oligarchy where if American citizens are poisoned, they are then left to fend for themselves and essentially left to die. And I think our documentary will show you very clearly that's what's happened here. But there's something else. and why I bring up mission accomplished. George W. Bush and, frankly, Dick Cheney was really the president. George W. Bush was just, getting coffee for him. George W. Bush and Dick Cheney went to war based on false information, false intelligence, intelligence in many ways that they manipulated. Testing and intelligence and data and, mushroom clouds and all this business that were not real. They concocted a lot of it. And they used that manipulated intelligence and data to launch a war that has killed hundreds of thousands of Iraqis, thousands of Americans. The death count when you add in suicides of Iraqi veterans is high. So, but when we think mission accomplished on Iraq, we have a very visual picture. Bush landing in that ridiculous fighter jet or whatever, with the commando suit and declaring mission accomplished. Well, I am here to tell you there was a mission accomplished-esque situation that happened in Flint. That's the story we broke. If you're new to Status Quo, last year, Jen and I, based on knocking on 450 doors in Flint, talking to 150 residents, we found that the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, for those of you who don't know anything about the Flint water crisis, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality was the environmental agency. Each state has its own environmental agency. Think about it as each state has its own EPA. This was the agency that caused the Flint water crisis in the first place. They failed to add the proper corrosion control chemicals into the Flint River, and when the water was switched from Detroit's water system, which they never had a problem with in Flint, to the Flint River, they didn't add the proper corrosion control chemicals, which by law must be added. It's called treating the water, chemically treating the water. And because they didn't add that, when the water went in, it was basically just acid water. And it leached on, it caused the already aged, very old corroded pipes to leach off lead. And lead went into that water system, and we all know what happened as a result. So all of a sudden, the corporate media covered it for, I don't know, probably Rachel Maddow covered it. She deserves credit. In the beginning, she's totally dropped the ball since, because she's obviously the leader of this Russian Cold War reenactment, this kooky conspiracy theory. The media went down there. I think they were down there. National media people were there for like a week or two, and then it was very focused on 2016. Trump moved down his escalator, and that was it. So there really hasn't been eyes and microphones and cameras down here. I mean, Ty and I have been here combined. I've been here a few more times than him, but we've been down here so many times, and it's always a common theme. There's no national media here because there's been a narrative spun that the water lead levels in Flint, the lead levels have gone down, and there's been a narrative spun that Flint is now back to in compliance, or Flint's lead levels are now back to within EPA regulations. That is to say, mission accomplished. Flint's water is fine. Well, that information that the media just breathlessly kept regurgitating coming from the EPA and the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, the same environmental agency that caused the crisis in the first place. That information was coming from 2 years, a little over 2 years of water testing, as our story detailed. That water testing was basically a group started out at over 1,000 homes, but it boiled down then to 650 homes, now down to ultimately it boiled down to less than 200 homes. And these homes were selected by the State Environmental Agency and the EPA. So the EPA with the State Environmental Agency, these homes were selected to essentially be the focus group of homes in Flint that would be used. They would be tested consistently in several different rounds, and if their lead levels were going down over a course of time, then the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality could say, Flint's lead levels are now back to EPA regulatory numbers, which is 15 parts per billion for lead. That's a nonsense number anyway. The real acceptable level is 0, but that's the EPA's arbitrary level, 15 parts per billion. It's not even a public health level. It's a corrosion control level, putting that aside. So how do they get these numbers? Well, the state environmental agency, according to the EPA, the state environmental agency was supposed to drop off testing kits for the residents that were on this program, the program I just described. It was called the Sentinel program. And those residents were supposed to, read the written instructions, test your water in the morning after the water hasn't been used for at least 6 hours, and take the sample, and then you leave it outside, and the state picks it up. So the residents were supposed to be testing the water, not the state, the residents. So last May, I was in Flint. Jen and I were in Flint on a different story. And I was having a conversation with a resident, and he just casually mentioned to us, that, the state had come by to test his water, and, they ran the water for a little bit, and then they took it and left. To tell you the truth, the first time I heard it, I didn't really think anything of it. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head how the EPA mandates you test water. I don't know what the regulations are for water testing. So I had spoken to another resident who's become a really good source of mine, and I mentioned that, and she said, "They're not supposed to do that. That's flushing." And I said, "What do you mean?" "They're flushing the lead out. When you run the water," the guy told me they did it for like 2 minutes. "When you run the water first, you're flushing potentially high levels of lead out." So I then started talking to other residents, just residents I knew. I mean, at that point, I had been here over 10 times, so I knew enough residents to say, "Hey, has your water ever been tested?" Blah, 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 blah. So we got like 2 or 3 residents at that time to tell us the same thing. Yeah, officials came in, they ran the water, and they took the sample. And we got back very low levels of lead. So it was already June, and my gut had told me, knowing just the level of corruption in this state and this country, but specifically this state, it was still Republican Governor Rick Snyder was still governor. I said, you know what? We need to knock on doors. We need to see if this is more widespread. Because if this is more widespread, when I say widespread, I mean, you're talking about literally cooking up false numbers, flushing residents' water before you take samples. What that means, that's falsifying federal regulatory water tests. That's a crime. Aaron Brockovich is on the record. It's a crime in our story. And why would they do that? Why would they falsify the numbers? Well, the only reason to do this would be to obtain a clear sample and report false information, she said, calling for criminal prosecution of officials that improperly flushed water before sampling. She also demanded citywide retesting to begin and the reopening of the free water pods the governor shuttered. Quote, "Falsifying a federal and state regulatory compliance test, that is a crime," she said. Brockovich also noted that in light of these falsified tests, it's not possible, as has been done by many media outlets, to claim thousands of other cities have higher water lead levels than Flint, since Flint's real water lead numbers are now in question. She also said, "Flushing before a first draw sample is a violation. The entire purpose of testing the first draw means turn on the tap, put the sample bottle in right away. You take it as a first draw right away. The entire purpose of testing the first draw is to detect how much lead and copper have leached into the water overnight. Once it is flushed out, it defeats the purpose of a test. Flushing is cheating." So I want to boil this down, because it's hard sometimes. I've gone on shows and I've realized I'm explaining it in a scientific way, because it is a scientific story. It's about water testing and lead levels and all that. But I want to boil it down, put aside science, put aside water testing. The governor of Michigan, Rick Snyder, his environmental agency that caused this lead crisis in the first place, his environmental agency that actually lied in 2015 to the EPA, they told the EPA, yeah, we've been adding corrosion control chemicals into the water, when they weren't. That's why the lead was leaching off, because they didn't add the proper chemicals. That environmental agency, not only did they cause the poisoning of Flint citizens in the first place, children and adults, They then manipulated the testing and the data after the fact to prematurely declare crisis over. Let that sink in. They caused the poisoning in the first place, and then they covered up the real numbers. I want to be abundantly clear. Let me be clear. I don't know what the real lead levels are in Flint. If they did the testing the right way, starting tomorrow, it's possible that the lead levels are lower. The lead levels are within compliance of EPA regulations. That is possible. But the point is, what we found by knocking on doors, old school journalism, which you funded, and you could fund more of that old school journalism. Statuscoup.com/join. Statuscoup.com/join. What we found here is essentially state officials going into poisoned residents' homes and in front of them, knowingly testing the wrong way to get lower numbers. To get lower numbers for the express reason to say we're meeting EPA regulatory compliance, which is 15 parts per billion, and then right after the governor 1 year ago, now the ex-governor 1 year ago, declared Flint's water restored, they shut down the remaining free water distribution centers called water pods. There were only 4 left, but poor, poisoned residents depended on them for years to get clean water. Buying cases and cases of bottled water is not cheap, especially for people that are impoverished. Flint, last time I looked, was 42% poverty level. It might be more now. I want you to understand that what we found is a crime, but it's also one of the worst examples of government corruption and immoral corruption at that. State officials were literally going into people's homes with the parent and the child standing there, in some cases we found, watching them do it, and knowingly flushing away potentially high levels of lead, and then sending them a piece of paperwork saying, your levels are fine. What would you call that? I would call that endangering the lives of people that have already been endangered. You're further endangering the lives of these people because you're giving them a false sense of security. And why I'm doing this long build-up, because I want to play you a clip. All of this has happened out in the open. You want to know why? Because these state officials did not expect anyone to ever even follow their tracks. These state officials never thought a journalist or a team of journalists, Jen and I at first, and then Ty was with us when he joined Status Coup. They never thought the residents on this program would be talked to by journalists. They never thought that it would be uncovered that they were testing the wrong way. And that's why I always tell you, finding corruption in this country is not as hard as you think, because the corrupt individuals and organizations are usually sloppy because they don't expect anyone to look, because we don't have journalists in this country. We have paid stenographers. We have public relations professionals who put makeup on, are handed a microphone, and pretend to be anchors. I'm talking to you, Jake Tapper. I'm talking to you, Wolf Blitzer. I'm talking to you, Brian Stelter. I'm talking to you, Rachel Maddow. I'm talking to all of you. Think what we broke, what we found by knocking on 450 doors on a shoestring budget, thanks to you giving us that budget and all the resources of all these outlets. So the bottom line is, I don't have evidence yet, one way or the other, that the water is still contaminated. I do have evidence that the testing that was done to declare it safe, to declare it restored, was manipulated. More simply put, cooked. So remember, like this non-live stream. The more people that like this non-live stream, the more people that will see this non-live stream. That's YouTube's algorithm. YouTube is suppressing us 7 Wasted Sunday, but we're still almost about to hit 39,000 subscribers, which means we're very close to 40. And then you hit 40 and it's, within striking distance. It will take work to get to 50,000. So We're a year and a month old, 1 year and a month old. So to hit 40,000 in a year and a month, when half the time viewers don't know we're live, half the time subscribers don't know we're live, half the time subscribers are literally unsubscribed involuntarily. Our streams don't even show up in subscribers' feeds. It's a modern miracle, thanks to you. So I want to contrast what the corporate media has been doing for the last 2.5 years, instead of following up on a humanitarian disaster and, frankly, one of the biggest environmental cover-ups in the United Corporations of America's history. Let me show you a clip from The View today.
Then what's the problem? Because this is my question here, and we had a little bit of a break. So he's the worst president in history. There's according to our legal analyst, there's so much in this report that is damning and whatever.
Absolutely.
So what's the problem? Then why is everyone so nervous about 2020? If this is just a nail in the coffin
because
and
we're afraid the Russians will steal the election again.
But to me, that sounds irrational. That's an irrational answer to this question I just presented in front of you. Democrats, as my friend.
What's the rational answer?
The rational is the same thing I said the same thing I said when I left, is that unfortunately for Democrats, you got to get out there and win over the voters you lost in the middle of the country.
The question is, what are Republicans going to do about this behavior?
Thank you for clapping, whoever that is. By the way, my one fan, ma'am, thank you so much.
What is the Republican Party?
3 over there.
I think the better question, Megan.
But the Russians, so the Russians don't steal the election again. The intellectual stupidity of the media elites of this country is astounding. Astounding. But I wanted to play that clip for a reason. Don't get me wrong. I read most of the Mueller report. I disagree with some. I think it is pretty damning. Not in terms of collusion. There was never any evidence that he colluded. It was a fakakta, cockamamie, Cold War, Rocky IV reenactment for ratings and clicks. That's all it was. But Trump did obstruct justice 7 ways to Sunday. Some people don't like that I report that or I say that. Well, it's just true. If you read it, it's true. He did obstruct justice. If he wasn't the president, he'd be charged with obstruction of justice. Most lawyers have said this, and I've read it, and I know about obstruction of justice well enough to know that's what he did. But it's also like, none of it is surprising. We knew who this man was. But why I wanted to play that clip is this kind of talk, this kind of empty, ridiculous, insane, tone-deaf hysteria, so that the Russians don't steal the election again. This is what we have seen for 2.5 years now, since since Donald Trump rolled down that escalator. This is what we have seen from the mainstream media. Russiagate, Cold War hysteria, fact-free, reporting, sensationalism, propaganda, unverified reports like the Steele dossier being published in full. This is what we've seen instead of this. We found this strange thing where they would go in to one home in particular. This young couple just moved in like in May, and they put, I think it was a test for chlorine, like that little dipstick in. Ran the water for 10 minutes, then told them, you're fine. Yet the 1-year-old black baby has white sores all over her leg since moving in 2 months ago.
Yeah, they said feed this water to your babies.
Yeah, the mother has sickle cell anemia and had it all her life, but it's gotten to the point now where she's going to the hospital every 4 days and her levels are off. The husband has seizures prior to the water switch, but it seems to be getting worse. And the 5-year-old son, since moving into this home, who knows whether it's lead poisoning from years ago that's finally showing up, but can't count to 30 anymore, stops at 14, he forgets.
Oh, wow.
Forgetting letters of the alphabet.
The stuff right here was all over her face. Her ears even had tore up. In the inside real bad on both sides.
Yeah, it looks like a mix of blisters and...
And she actually was peeling nails, so...
We'll stay on it. I'm sorry this is happening to you.
I'm just like, I don't know what to do. I'm devastated. I really just want to go to the city and just go off. Like, I cry every day because my baby's skin break out. And I feel like that's just not right. They shouldn't have to go through this. These babies don't deserve that. And then y'all stop the water giving out. Why? That wasn't even a smart situation to do. But hey, y'all think it's good? More power to y'all. Because it's infecting every kid around here. My son went from knowing everything to just having to repeat himself several times to understand what I'm saying. And it's frustrating when you know you sit and you work hard with your kids and they forget stuff.
Stories like Jasmine are everywhere in Flint. You just have to knock on doors and look. Let me explain. What we found in Flint by knocking on 450 doors, because Jen deserves a lot of credit too, she helped me break this story. We found that Michigan Department of Environmental Quality officials went into residents' homes that were on the official state testing program, the state lead and copper testing program. You know, after the water crisis became a national scandal, they created this program to test residents' water routinely and to see if the lead levels were going down. So we found that Michigan Department of Environmental Quality officials in many cases went into residents' homes and ran their water first before taking a sample. Like I described, that's illegal. It's against the EPA's main drinking water regulation, the lead and copper rule. In some cases, it wasn't Michigan Department of Environmental Quality officials who did it. It was workers from the CORE program. CORE were long-term unemployed Flint residents trained by the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality to go around Flint, pass around water filters for residents, help residents put on the water filters, make sure they have enough bottled water, these kinds of things. They were not supposed to be testing residents' waters. Neither was Michigan Department of Environmental Quality officials. The EPA said on the record in our story, the state was supposed to drop off the testing kits for the residents to do the testing. So not only did we find they were illegally flushing residents' water lines, we found that they were testing in the first place when they shouldn't have been. In some cases, it wasn't Michigan. In other cases, we found, so you have on one bucket, Michigan Department of Environmental Quality officials were flushing residents' water lines. In another bucket of homes we found, CORE workers were improperly running the water before taking samples. Again, CORE workers were trained by Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. Frankly, they weren't water experts. They're not professionals. They were volunteers trained by MDEQ. So I don't even blame them. They were probably told by Michigan Department of Environmental Quality officials, let the water run first and then take the sample. So they were kind of like useful idiots for the state environmental agency who was running this manipulative testing operation. And in other cases, it wasn't MDEQ or CORE officials actually going in and letting the water run before taking resident samples for them. It was the residents doing it because MDEQ officials or CORE officials verbally told them, let your water run for a little bit before taking the sample. So it was either doing it themselves, officials were doing it for the residents and testing the wrong way, or telling them to test the wrong way. Either way you slice it, it's dishonest, it's deceptive, it's false and manipulative testing, it's artificially lowering the levels, because as a plumber on the record told me in our piece, there's a lot of lead that's inside the home, the interior plumbing, inside the fixtures in the home, including the faucets. So even flushing for 30 seconds, you could potentially be flushing out extremely high levels of lead. Yeah, and it will show up low on the test, but that lead just builds back up. So it's offering residents a false sense of security because it's not actually showing the real lead that's in that home. So in the clip I showed you, I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty positive it wasn't actually a lead and copper test that she was describing. There were tests done that weren't official EPA regulatory tests, but there were tests done throughout Flint through this to make sure people's chlorine levels were high. Chlorine levels were adequate for their home because they were adding chlorine to the water. They were adding chlorine to the water system. So in that case, you do flush the water before. You could flush the water as much as 10 minutes, and that's how you do the test. So that's what she was talking about, the little dipstick they put in her water. Yet these officials, whomever they were, I don't know which officials went into her home, they run the water for 10 minutes. They tell her on the spot, yeah, you're good. It's drinkable. Your kids could drink this. You could bathe them, whatever. They moved in, Jasmine and her boyfriend with her 2 kids. They moved in to that home on Wolcott Street in May of 2018. I interviewed them in June. So they were only in that home for a month. Well, they were told that the water's fine. They did the chlorine test. They were told the water's fine. Well, in that clip, you see the white blisters on her 1-year-old daughter's ears. If you watch the full documentary and other clips, you'll see the white blisters on her legs, and her arms. Jasmine was bathing her for 30 minutes in the bath. Why? Because she was told the water was fine. And you'll see in the documentary, it's drinkable. You could bathe them. You could bathe your children. 1 month into living in that home. Her daughter had clear skin before that. White blisters and scabs all over her earlobes, her legs, and her arms. I don't think she got that from sitting watching, Barney. This is what the state of Michigan is doing. Either gross corruption, intentionally testing the wrong way, or gross negligence and ignorance, telling people your water's fine when it's clearly not. And by the way, it's not just lead that has been the issue in Flint. There's bacterial problems in the water. They found TTHMs in the water, which are cancer-causing chemicals, and God knows what else has been found in that water. They're not testing for all contaminants. Most of the time, they're just testing for lead and copper. So how is it that a young couple like Jasmine and her boyfriend move in with 2 children in 2018? We're not talking about 2016, when the height of this scandal made national headlines. We're talking about 1 year ago, 2018. How is it that a family moves in to this street, officials come over, they put a dipstick for chlorine in their sink, 10 minutes of flushing, which in this case is allowed, they say your water's fine. All of a sudden, her kid's breaking out in white blisters all over her body. Not to mention her 5-year-old boy. When I spoke with him on the porch, I asked him, because I wanted to see, Jasmine said he's having learning problems now and delays. Counts to 14. She says he used to know all the way up to 30. Stops at like F in the alphabet, used to know the whole thing. To be fair, they did live in Flint before this house. So, that could be lead poisoning from 2 years prior at the previous location that's now showing up in his cognitive delays. But there's learning disabilities developing throughout Flint in children. There's behavioral problems causing rampant suspensions in schools and things like that happening throughout Flint. All of this happening in plain daylight, and the media covers it up instead of covering it. And I'm even talking about the Flint Journal, Flint's hometown paper. Do you know the Flint Journal has still not covered our story, and they're probably not going to cover our documentary. This is the Flint newspaper. They have a lot more resources than we do, I'll promise you that. They're not knocking on doors. They're not speaking to residents. They breathlessly, and I'm talking about one reporter in particular, his name's Ron Fonger, have breathlessly, since the water crisis broke out, just republished what Governor Rick Snyder has said, what the EPA has said, and what the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality has said. Same goes for Detroit Free Press. Same goes for Detroit News. So who's supposed to advocate for these residents? Who's supposed to hold the government accountable, actually investigate, are the numbers they're giving us, are these lead levels that they're saying accurate? Who's supposed to be doing this? Because the national media is not, and the local media is not. And for members and patrons who have already watched the documentary, you saw more clips with that young mother and more horrible clips of her 1-year-old baby, now 2 years old, with white spots and blisters all over her legs and arms. Who knows what's going on in her mind? She's only 1 year old. Who knows what's going on in her mind from drinking that water? Jasmine said, instead of saying mama, she's now saying vava. And misremembering words she used to know. This is why status quo exists. Because the corporate media is not going to do it. And frankly, do you see any independent media outlets rolling up their sleeves and knocking on doors? You will see how many doors we knocked on in this documentary. And you could become a status quo member immediately. That's statusquo.com/join. Statusquo.com/join. Is real independent journalism that exposes environmental genocide, environmental cover-ups like this worth it to you? I think, I'm biased, but if I was just watching and I wasn't a part of this, I would shell out at least $5 to $10 a month, $20 a month if you're really passionate and have the money, or you could pay annually $179. This is how we keep doing this kind of reporting. And make no mistake, we didn't just publish the story and be like, oh, we hope it gets traction. We have been working day and night to get this more attention. We met with the Attorney General's office of Michigan in February, and hopefully we're going to meet with them for a second time this week. We met with one of the highest ranking officials in the state of Michigan. They asked to meet with us after we sent our report and evidence. You think they would be meeting with us if we didn't have firm evidence of what we're reporting? Frankly, the congressman for Flint, his name's Dan Kildee, has been silent on this. And frankly, spineless. Frankly, the mayor of Flint, Karen Weaver, has essentially been silent on this and spineless. I don't know why. I have my theories, but I don't want to say those theories until I have more facts. But you're talking about a massive environmental cover-up. You're talking about cooking and falsifying water testing in Flint for over 2 years. And taking this falsified testing, these falsified numbers, and using it to declare mission accomplished. And when you declare mission accomplished, in Flint's case, the water's restored, the water levels are meeting EPA regulations, then shutting down the water pods, which these people desperately need. These people are poor. They're impoverished. They're sick. They're elderly. They're sick and young. They're sick and middle-aged from the lead, from the bacteria, from other things. You're talking about cooking up numbers and then cooking up a false declaration that the water is safe. That is inhumane. That is illegal. It is corrupt. And people need to be held accountable. And as long as I got air going in these lungs, I will keep kicking it. So that's it today. We're doing a little shorter than usual because I got to record an interview with Mike from the Humanist Report. Ty, if you remember, we're going to upload a video that we did with Ty. You will see that this man has not slept in 3 days to finish this documentary. He's even making minor changes from the version we published Sunday for members and patrons. He's making minor changes for the version that we're going to publish, fingers crossed, tomorrow, because we don't know about the upload speed here, for everybody else. If you're not a member, you will have access to the documentary for a small rental fee or a purchase fee. Hey, we're socialists, but we got to keep the lights on. We're living in a capitalist prison. So we're going to charge a small rental fee or purchase fee for non-status quo members. If you become a member, if you become a status quo member, we're at 355 members right now. After that, it's free. It's already up on our website under the members section. It's also available for patrons as well, up on our Patreon site. So I really hope that if you believe in what we're doing, if you're someone watching right now who's not a member, I really hope that you'll consider, there's a lot of outlets out there, both corporate and frankly independent, that now have a membership model. And for membership. You get, if it's a print outlet, if you're a subscription, you get all access, free, as many articles as you want, blah, 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 blah. Or on the other side, if it's less corporate and, independent, you get bonus content and, bonus shows and all this stuff. And I'm not mentioning anyone in particular, but there are a lot of outlets out there, both corporate and independent, that are asking you to pay $5 a month or $10 a month. And I want to ask you, what are you getting for that money that you're spending, if you are? Because you're not getting actual old school door knocking, actual relentless sweating. If you see this documentary, you're going to laugh or cry seeing the towel around my neck as we knocked on doors in 100-degree weather with the heat index in Flint last summer. As I said in the documentary, I'm schwitzing. Support independent journalism that actually does journalism, not 24/7 Trump, not kooky conspiracy theories about Russia, not, clickbait and sensational bullshit, because that ain't doing that. It's not going to help create change in this country. What will help create change in this country is waking more people up to the atrocities being done to us by our government, Republican governments and Democratic governments. The Flint water crisis happened under Democratic President Barack Obama, and he went to Flint and took a half a sip of filtered water and said, "I'm told it's drinkable with a filter." I think you'll see in our documentary that's highly questionable. So this week, we're not going to have a stream every day at 5 o'clock because we're out and about interviewing people. We're going to be covering a town hall tomorrow night. Because we are still in the middle of a 90-day live stream ban, we cannot go live, unfortunately, on our YouTube channel. So we're going to record it. We'll try to flip it around as soon as we can. We might go live on Periscope. So you could definitely, if you're not following us, follow at Jordan Sheridan, because I'll be live on Periscope for some of this. Facebook I don't bother with because it's so suppressed. Nobody knows when we're live. But we will try to turn this stuff around quickly. Again, Flushing Flint premieres tomorrow. We believe, if the upload speed works at the home we're in, we're going to be premiering it tomorrow, flushingflint.com. Go to it now. That's flushingflint.com. If you haven't seen the documentary yet, you could watch the trailer for the documentary. Right there, you can see Erin Brockovich called it a crime, cheating. She's no slouch. I believe Erin Brockovich when she speaks. So, I really hope if you've watched it, you will be a status quo ambassador. You will tell your friends, your family, even if you have never known anything about the Flint water crisis. This is about humanity. People need to watch it. My younger brother, who's not into politics, is not into anything, just to support it, he watched it yesterday. He wrote me, "I cannot believe this is happening in our country. I had no idea." Those were his words. This is the type of person that we're trying to reach. Somebody who cares, but has been made numb by the stupidity of corporate news. Please, tax season just passed. If you got a return, statusquo.com/join. Real journalism is worth $5, $10, or $20 a month, or $179 a year. That's how we're going to grow, because we're not taking a dime from the oligarchs or the plutocrats. And let me tell you something, we've had the opportunity and I've had the offers and I turned them down each time, because we're not going to be owned by the very people destroying this country. Thank you for watching. We will be back at some point with videos tomorrow. Peace.